Gala Music, welcome to another AMA. I am Taco, Community Manager, and I'm excited to be welcomed by Clayton, Lil Xtra. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. How are you today?
I'm doing great. We join these meetings a little bit early, so if it starts at 3, we pop in, and so we're just digitally backstage chatting, and then Paul gets in my ear and says, "Okay, and 1, 2, 3, go!" And it's like, "Oh, wait, we're in the middle of a conversation." Uh, yeah, this is great. We took a little bit of a break from AMAs, which bums me out because I like doing them, introducing emerging artists to the community, and I feel like we first talked to each other ages ago. And so I'm really glad to finally get you on the platform.
Yeah, me too.
This is really great. We sort of categorize artists as either established or emerging, um, but emerging has gotten to be pretty wide, and I definitely consider you to be in the upper emerging category, whatever that is. I mean, you know, couple 100,000 monthly streamers on Spotify. Like I know you're out there as a working musician, and so I think it's great when artists of your caliber join us. So yeah, this is really exciting.
Thank
You're
you.
you're sort of at that place where like it feels like you're so close to whatever that next thing is. Like
Yeah, right on the edge of the next step.
yeah, how is that as do you as an artist think of it in tiers that way? Like are there certain like you first start out and you have like a little bit of play in your head, are there benchmarks like 10,000, 50,000, a half a million? Do you think of it like that or you're just chugging along making music?
Yeah, I mean, more at the beginning, of course, but yeah, especially when you first start, it's all tiered off to you. I mean, the first time I got like 100,000 streams on a song, I thought it was the end of the world. Um, and now that doesn't really like as much of anything anymore. But yeah, I mean, it definitely depends because you can tell the difference, sort of. Like you said, I'm sort of like in an intermittent stage somewhere where it could kind of go up, hit that next step, or it could just not end up really doing that at some point. Um, but it kind of depends too, because if you're an independent artist, those layers feel totally different. You know what I mean? Like if I had 5 or 6 times as many people to listen to me, but I was on like a major label, I'd feel like I was in a smaller tier, if anything.
Yeah, that makes sense. We talk about that a lot, the difference between being independent and being on a label. And if you can function independently, that's great. And it seems to be helping people the most in Web3 through the NFT space.
Yes, that's a big part of what I'm excited for with this.
Yeah.
Always.
Okay, Kenji is in our Discord. Just says, "Let's go." You know, okay, Kenji in real life.
No, we haven't met in real life. Not yet. We've messaged back and forth a decent little bit at this point, and he lives pretty close to me, so we'll have to meet up in person soon. I mean, he's within half an hour or something. He lives very close.
Nice. I like that. I like having a bunch of artists within the same area. Like we also just brought Monia Shaibi onto the platform, also in Atlanta. Um,
Nice.
I like the idea of artists collaborating on stuff, and so there's a bunch of cool artists all close to each other. My dream is to all form up groups and do songs and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of him, but my main producer that I work with, his artist name is Kato, and he lives about an hour from me now. He used to live a lot closer before I moved to this side of town. But he has a nice little network that's kind of like that of, I don't know, 6 or 7 pretty decently established artists that come over there and work in person. He's bigger than I am now. He signed something with Promoting Sounds, and then Sion is the same. I think he moved too, but he used to live right there and be in there in person all the time. Miza, me, obviously, Sido Curse. So there's quite a few different artists right around that space.
Nice.
It's fun.
So, watching this, hook up with this guy because he's got the producer contacts and
For
he'll
sure.
make it happen for you. Yeah, that's amazing. So let's talk about you and your music. It seems like the people who come on board, as I talk to them, they either started when they were 3 years old or they picked it up later on like normal people. You started music when you were like a toddler, basically. Is that right?
Yeah, my mom's a big piano player, so she started me off at, I don't know, 3 or 4 playing piano, something like that. Very young, before I went to kindergarten, for sure.
Right. And then just kind of picked up music from there. How many instruments do you play now? Our community likes to know this stuff. I like to know this stuff.
Man, let's see. So I haven't played some of them in a while, but a lot of it's sort of like riding a bike. It can take me a couple minutes and then it'd be fine. So I played drums for basically my whole life. Guitar, obviously, bass guitar. Saxophone was another one I got real good at for a little while. That's pretty much it. Honestly, I never got super into brass instruments or other woodwinds and stuff. It's just too expensive to get into. So basically everything you would need to play in a rock band. That was
I don't know if I've picked up on any sax in your music. Do you ever play it in any of your tracks?
No, I played sax for several years in high school, and I was good at it, but I didn't enjoy it very much because it's very painful to play. My gums would just bleed all the time, and they'd like, with guitar, obviously it's like that when you first start and you build up calluses, and it never really bothers you again as long as you don't let those go away. And it just never got like that. It felt like it got worse and worse, and it just wasn't any fun to play. So eventually I just sold the saxophone and stopped. But if I picked one up today, I could still play it. I remember how to do it. It's not something you really like forget. I wouldn't sound great, but I could do it.
Yeah. If you don't like it, don't bother, right?
It was fun to play. It just hurt too much, man. Constantly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, we got some questions from Maserati, who's also dropping this week.
Hey, what's up, man?
How did you get your name? Is the first one. How'd you get the name Lil Xtra? Why did you get your name Lil Xtra?
If there's one thing I could change about my career, it'd probably be that, to be honest. But when I first started, I had been in rock bands and stuff for a few years, and I didn't know how any of this was going to go. I kind of gave myself a deadline of about 3 years. Say that if you go really, really hard with this for 3 years and it doesn't work out, then you can figure something else out. But give it enough time to see if you can actually make it happen. And honestly, with the name, I didn't know exactly what kind of music I was going to be making, so I didn't want to have a name that kind of made it where I could only do one thing, which is interesting because now I feel like that's basically what I did. But at the time, it was kind of like, halfway joking name where I felt like I could make anything under that name and people would have to check it out and just be like, okay, I didn't know what to expect from the name, but here it is. I just felt like it opened my options up more. I don't know.
Yeah, I think whatever anyone expects from your music, it's not that.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I think is pretty fun. You were in, like you said, rock bands for a while, and then decided just to go solo, and now you're just your own rock band. But in your music, like you're playing all that stuff, right?
The drums are sequenced just because I don't have anywhere to record them like that. I live in an apartment, all that. But I really try not to program anything that I couldn't play pretty easily. And everything else, yeah, it's played. I'm the only, for the more rock stuff that's been coming out recently, I've been the only person doing anything on that except the master at the very end of it.
Right, which is pretty cool because there's a lot in there. Yeah. I don't know what to call your genre because your music is pretty expansive. Like we were talking about the track you're releasing this week is pretty rock centered, but it's kind of all over the map. How would you describe your music to people if you met someone on the street?
Usually what I tell people is that the music changes, but the lyrical style and just kind of my general writing style is usually pretty similar, and that's kind of where it comes together, at least for me. It's just sad, usually. The lyrics are always the most important part to me. The music is just what I'm there to write the lyrics on. I spend a ton of time on the music, try to make it good, try to make it interesting, but to me, that like lyrical core is the most important part of anything I make. And that's generally what tends to be the through is it's just kind of it's sad stuff. It's emo rock, emo rap, whatever, somewhere in between, but you're very rarely going to hear me make a happy song. And if I do, it's probably sarcastic, which happens a decent bit, and people don't always know that. That's really funny when I write a really like sad, depressing song, but it's sort of a sarcastic tone, and then I get messages from people being like, "Oh, I really liked how that song was positive, and it made me feel better about my day I was having." It's just like awesome. I'm glad, but that is not what I meant at all.
But this wasn't meant to be positive.
Not at all. But it's still kind of nice to have people say that and that they took it in a better way, you know?
Yeah. One of the things I first liked about you when I found out about you is on your Spotify. Usually in the bios, like they can be really long, and yours just says Lil Xtra lives a frustratingly overextended life. Enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny you say that because every like label rep anything person that I've ever talked to says that's a horrible idea and you shouldn't do that. And it just, I don't feel like it really actually matters that much. If people want to know more about me, you can find more about me. But I feel like that says as much about me or my music than anything I could actually write, you know, about my life, extended biography. I think that tells you about me.
I liked it. And then when people ask me about like, oh, what should I be listening to get an idea of like the music, I tell them that you really can't. Like you like just go on Spotify, just jump around and listen to 5 or 6 or 7 different songs because like if you just pick one, it might be totally different than some of the other stuff, which is I think really interesting. I feel like a lot of artists now are doing that. It's not like this is my lane and this is the sound I'm going to make forever. Like people are really sort of like, I can rock, I can rap, I can be, you know, straight emo, I can do whatever I want.
Well, I feel like that's one of the nice perks of being more independent is you don't really have anybody in your ear telling you like, hey, you need to make this. It needs to be like this. You know, there's always sort of the balance of like, I know if I make a metal song, it's not going to do as many streams necessarily, but then I always have people that love that, and it tends to be their favorite music of mine. So that all kind of balances out. But I just always try to focus on making a good song, and I don't really think too much about what genre it's going to be or whatever. I just try to write it, and then once it's written, I try to think through the production of it before I ever start on it, kind of what I want that vibe to be. And I just really focus on the songwriting of it and trying to make the best song I possibly can. And then I worry about how to classify it once it's done, because I don't usually know what it's going to be until it's done.
That makes sense. So who would you consider to be your influences?
I mean, a lot of people, obviously, just like the emo rap scene starting in general was huge for me because it was a big moment where I kind of looked at the music I made before and what was going to come, realized there was an intersection there that I could actually make good music in. Because I can't make like, you know, just like straight radio hip hop wouldn't be good. That's not what I do. So finding a way and a scene that kind of blended elements together that I felt very naturally drawn to, that in and of itself was a big thing. Obviously all the early emo rap people huge on that, Bones, Nothing Nowhere, all those kind of guys, and plenty more that I'm not mentioning further back. But a lot of the more like deeply rooted influence that's been there for me forever comes from a lot of 90s alternative and punk and stuff like that. Green Day, probably the biggest single influence for me for all my music. You know, Blink-182, a lot of various stuff from the 90s. Like Everclear is a big influence for me. That's like a little bit off the wall for some people. All kinds of that kind of stuff. Smashing Pumpkins, Nirvana. You know, I try to glean more of like my songwriting from them, and then like I said, the lyrics are all kind of, I try to just write more for myself lyrically, but musically that's where more of my influences come from. And then if it's more of a rap thing, just all kinds of different rap that I've been listening to for, you know, just forever. Mac Miller, Tyler the Creator, on down to, you know, much more mainstream stuff like Drake and Migos. Obviously I'm from Gwinnett County, so like I've listened to a ton of Migos the last 10 years just with all my friends and stuff. But
Yeah,
thing.
I definitely wasn't expecting Everclear.
Yeah, big one, big one. Mhm.
That's right in my wheelhouse. I'm a little older, and so that era, but that's right in my coming of age sweet spot. So
Yeah.
that's great. Maserati also asked, "What is your biggest takeaway you want your supporters to have listening to your music?"
That's a good question. Um, One thing earlier on when people first started kind of listening to me, like I said, it sometimes people don't really know what the songs are supposed to be about. And at the very beginning, I think that bothered me a little bit because I felt like that was a consequence of me not being clear enough in my writing or like kind of forthcoming with it. And the longer that's gone on, the more I feel like as long as whoever's listening to it takes something away from it emotionally and it makes some sort of an impact on them, I don't care what that impact is. And I kind of like that it's different things for different people. So the main thing I would just tell people is like, if it says something to you and it kind of touches you, that's great. That's what I hope for. If it doesn't, then I don't know, it might not be for you, but that's normally what I want people to take away is that there is a meaning behind these songs. And I hope you can take at least part of it away. It doesn't have to be the meaning I intended for it. Sometimes you'll find a much deeper meaning somewhere in a way that, only reflects your life.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so we talk about people's songwriting process. It sounds like you start with lyrics and then build a song from there, or no?
No, the opposite. The opposite. I try not to write any lyrics to anything until I have basically the whole song. Because like I said, they're the most important part. But to me, I've never understood how people write lyrics first and then make music because that just doesn't compute in my brain as a natural way to do that. To me, the only way that makes any sense is if I write the music, which is kind of like my base,
Mhm.
and I put the lyrics on top of it because normally the music itself and the vibe of the music really informs what the lyrics will be about. Like if I write the saddest lyrics of all time, I want a sad sounding song, and if I can't create music that actually sounds the way I want those lyrics to run that vibe, it's frustrating. It's way harder. It's never worked for me that way. If I create the music bed first, it really gives me that initial spark and push into the lyrics. Because a lot of times I'll take 3 or 4 days listening to like the music to a song over and over again and not writing anything, just trying to get that initial spark. And then it's very common for me to write like the first line of a song. And the second that first line or that first flow comes, the whole song might be written in 40 minutes. And sometimes it takes longer, but a lot of times once it kind of comes to me, get that initial spark, then it just flows out from there. So that's kind of how I try to do it.
That's really interesting. I would have thought it would have been lyrics pre-written and then work it into the songs.
A lot of people do it that way. I don't know. It's kind of like doing math. People's brains all get to the same place eventually, but everyone does it a little bit differently in their heads. It's a little different how it works for them.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. So if you were collaborating with somebody else, you would want someone who works opposite you.
Well, it depends on if you're collaborating like in a studio physically together with them, or if you're doing something like obviously a lot of people that I work with. One of my friends that I work with the most is Sad Eyes. He lives in Portland, so I go visit him when I can. But like he's about as physically far away as you can be and still be in the same country, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So most of the time, if we work on something, the way it kind of works is one of us will make a song and leave a verse open or leave the hook open or whatever. Send it to the other one, be like, do you like this? Do you want to have anything on this? And then if it's something that we both really rock with, then that second person will normally write their verse sort of separate from it. That usually tends to work out better for me, especially if I'm getting someone else on my song, because I can kind of focus it more from the beginning, where maybe the hook and my verse have a very like distinct theme. I don't know. That's always been a little bit easier to collaborate that way for me, just because even if you're the second artist that hops on there, it just gives you a direction before you ever have to think about it. You know what I mean? If I listen to a song that I'm going to be on and I only have one verse, if they're talking about something specific, like a girl or whatever, I'm not going to come on there and talk about something totally different because it'd be kind of weird unless it's something that still makes sense thematically. Doing it together is a little different, but I don't know. Everyone kind of processes things differently. I'm not really sure it's possible to write with people that do it the same way you do. I don't know how common that actually is to find.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I don't know. I'm not a musician, and so thinking in terms of how collaborations would make sense is really interesting to me. Like, does someone write the music and then someone does the lyrics, or like you're saying, you team up on the lyrics, which feels like my head wants to like that you like each take like a section of lyrics and try to match them up.
Hmm. It also just depends on what your personal preference is. I know some people that hate trying to do anything alone, and they want as many voices in the room as possible to make their music as good as they can, and that's totally viable. And I totally get it. I can't do that. I will collaborate with people, and I like working with certain people, in person, this and that. But like honestly, I really just like making my stuff alone and not showing anybody until it's done. That really is my preference, and a lot of people aren't like that. It's just different for everybody.
Right. Like you get in the room with me and I just keep saying more sax, more sax. And you're like, no, we're good, man. That's not what this is about.
I find that if you are working with someone who's willing to kind of let you do your work in your own flow, then it can work out really well. But a lot of times people will interject, and if you have a specific vision for a full song, it's hard to collaborate with someone. It's easier on songs where you have like an idea that's a really good thing. The best way to go if you're going to try to make a collab, honestly, is when you get a song where you have a good hook that you really like and you don't know what to do with those verses. That's like perfect collaboration bait for me, because then it's like, oh, hey, if I get in touch with someone else that kind of has a different workflow and they help me kind of get started on this, then the next thing you know, it just turns out better than if I have like a full song in my head and then, take part of it out for someone else to come in. Those never seem to work out as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I should learn more about the music making process since I work for a music company. It's all pretty interesting.
It's different for everybody.
Yeah, it's cool learning about it. Maserati's last question. What do you like most about entering the Web3 space about NFTs?
Ooh, mostly that it's a brand new, totally foreign experience for me. So it's a lot of learning, but I kind of like that. I'm down to learn about this new thing that I think is gonna go places that I just don't understand at this point. Get there, but not there yet.
Right. There's a lot to it, and it's pretty complex, as we're finding even as we build our platform, which got pushed back a little bit just because there's so much on the back end that has to be right, and you can't really mess it up. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. You jumped into Discord though, so you're doing that. That's great.
Yes. Oh yeah. Of course. I used to be pretty active in Discord, and then I just kind of fell out of it for a little while. But
I started Discord.
Super active, which is really nice.
Yeah, I started Discord 100 years ago through gaming, because we'd log into Discord so we could have our mics to talk through Discord while we were playing our games. And I think I'm sort of the same thing where like I had my name early in my career, and then you're just kind of stuck with the name. I was Taco 10 years ago, and you're not changing that. And then you're in the community as Taco, and then you get hired as Taco, and that's it. You're locked in.
So the
feeling. So I get it. So the song you're releasing this week is Carried Away. Can you talk a bit about what inspired it, its vibe, the story?
So I've been writing a little bit more rock style music here recently. And my workflow for writing that is a little different than when I do rap stuff. A lot of times for rap stuff, I'll make samples, or I'll find samples, find a beat, start on that. But normally when I write something that's more rock centric like this, I'll start on the guitar and I'll write the whole song with just its very basic chords, and then kind of build everything else on top of it once I have the skeleton for it. This particular song, honestly, I sat down and I just started playing guitar, and I pretty much just played the verse the first time I went through it. Found the melody super easily. It came very, very naturally. And I don't know. I wanted something that felt heavier, but still had this very like, I don't know what the right word for it is. I guess accessible feeling to it. So I don't. It's not what I was going for initially necessarily, but then when I listened back to it now, it really vibes like an older Weezer song to me, where it's basically a pop song but with really heavy guitars, and that's pretty much what I wanted. So it turned out about how I was going for. It just wasn't exactly what I was expecting until I got about halfway through mixing it and realized that's how it was going to turn out.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really great description. We get them a little early, so I listen to them before everybody else does. I think that sounds right. Like it's a little bit heavier, but still really accessible.
Mhm.
So yeah, so nailed it.
The Weezer content is very different, but it kind of reminded me of a Hash Pipe by Weezer once it was finished. I was like, oh, I can hear a little of where this like inspiration came from.
Mhm.
I don't normally know where those ideas come from until they're kind of finished, and I can sit there and actually listen to them all the way. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is I know where this came from 18 years ago, listening to the album, the Green album, or whatever.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, that's really cool. And this one has not been released to other streaming services yet. We're kind of getting here first a little bit.
Yep, it should be coming out. I can't remember if it's next week or the week after, but it'll be on here first, exclusively for a little while.
Nice. That's fun. Um, oh, JKP wants to know, could you ask about the graphic design art of your NFT?
Of this specific one,
I think of this specific one.
album art's been different for pretty much everything that I make. Worked with several really talented artists. The last couple I actually um, have been AI generated, so obviously it's not exactly me making them, but I've sort of found a way to create some that's in a different form.
Huh. So you do that yourself? You have the song and you make the art for that one?
I have for the last couple. Normally, I'll contact actual graphic artists and they'll make them for me. I've worked with like Dare Sader. He's awesome. Scumbag Boogie on Instagram's done a lot of my work. He's been great. It kind of depends. Sometimes I just shoot pictures of myself. It really depends on the song and the vibe of it. But for this one, I felt like it was specific enough lyrically that I wanted something pretty specific for it. So yeah, the artwork for this one is AI generated.
When you're collaborating with other artists, do you just send them a cut of the song and say, just make me something that feels appropriate, or do you like give them art direction?
Normally, if I make a song for someone else to collaborate with, I will normally make basically the entire song and then leave whatever section I want them to do, whether it be a verse or a hook. I'll leave that part open. And normally I tell people to write whatever they feel. And obviously, like I said, it'll have like my verse, my hook, that kind of thing. I usually focus my songs pretty heavily. So normally if I send you a song like that, you can tell what it should be about, what you should probably do writing wise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've had times where we were gonna collab on something, and then I wrote a song about something sort of specific, and they were like, "Hey, man, like I don't have any experience with this. I can't really talk about this." And it's like, okay, and then you just make a different song with them. But that's how my process usually works for that if I collaborate.
I don't know if this song is up yet, but Justin will be adding "Carried Away" to the Gala radio, hopefully today, so we can preview it before the show goes live.
Nice.
Today's Tuesday.
Awesome. Yes.
So on Tuesday. It's been, so far this week has already been pretty crazy. There's a lot going on. It's tough to keep track of what day it is in a good way, but it's a lot. Does anyone else who's listening have any other questions? If you want to pop them into YouTube or into the Discord, I am in both currently. But I think we covered a decent amount. What are you working on now? Do you have any like gigs coming up, or just cranking away on new music?
Not any shows right now. Yeah, right now I've just been working on a lot of different stuff. Like I was telling you earlier, I'm sort of maybe kind of creating a project, not totally sure what it's going to become yet, so I haven't like made an announcement on that or anything. Um, but obviously, a good little bit of the last stuff that I've been making has been much heavier, like rock focus, which isn't like a permanent change for me or anything. Like you said earlier, I just kind of do different things, jump around a little bit. So right now, I've been creating more of that style. I think I have 8 or 9 of those songs finished. I think I've released like 4 of them. So I'm pretty well set for the next 3 or 4 months. So I'm working on more of that music, but I'm kind of taking it easy in more of like a writing stage right now, trying to get some new ideas for some new songs.
When you do play out, because you're playing basically all of the instruments on your music, how do you do that?
I haven't played live too terribly much, especially since COVID. I think I've only played 1 or 2 shows since then because we did that show in Portland for Nathan. I went on tour before that. Um, so I've been small enough that I have basically played like the music tracks through and just performed over them. Obviously, I'd love to get big enough where I can do that differently, take a drummer out, have a live band, that kind of thing. Um, but I don't know. Live music hasn't really been my focus with this project too terribly much. I'd love to get there where it can be a bigger part of it. Um, but honestly, I was in local bands for years before I started doing this kind of music, and I played. I mean, like everyone that plays local bands or anything like this, when you start, you play a lot of basically empty, just not fun shows. Um, and I've played hundreds of shows at this point. The novelty of it is kind of gone for me. It's fun, but it's only fun when people are there and they know your music and they're going for it. Um, so I'd love to get to a point, like I said, where live music is a bigger part of my career than it is right this moment, but it's not much of a focus for me at this particular time.
That's also really interesting. Like, I think a lot of people feel like if you're an artist, if you're a musician, like that's just a part of the deal, right? Like you're making music and you're doing gigs and stuff. Like it doesn't have to be. If you're independent, you do what you need. I like that though. Like get to a certain point, so you can bring a drummer out with you, and when it makes sense, career wise and music wise.
Well, and I'm not really big enough to go on a tour by myself at this point, at least not without losing a ton of money that I don't have to be going on a independent like headlining tour right at the moment. So really the best thing, hopefully, is that a few bigger artists will actually go on tours here relatively soon and take me. There might be something coming up this next year that I can't talk about at all. So that doesn't mean there won't be anything happening. I just don't really have any like concurrent plans for it at the moment.
Right. So there might be something happening with you going on tour with somebody else.
There might be, but like I said, I can't get into that at all. So
Yeah. No pressure. That so I feel like you're at a we have a lot of people come through my area who are touring who aren't as established as you are.
mhm.
Who so for me it feels like you like someone at your level um should be able to tour in a way that is financially viable.
A lot of that seems to depend on genre too. I don't know exactly why this is, if it's just a live instrument thing or like what the reason for it is exactly, but with rap music in general or like the emo rap scene that I'm more of a part of, or whatever, anything that isn't as focused on live instruments, like if you go to a metal show, everyone's playing guitar, playing the drums, all that kind of thing. The ones that don't have as big of a live element don't seem to have as much of a live um, community, I guess is the right word for it. Like I've seen rock bands that are my size that can go sell out my local venues, like it's no problem. But uh, it's a little different for my genre for whatever reason. Artists that are way bigger than me are selling out smaller venues than those same rock bands sometimes. I don't know. I still haven't figured out why that is exactly, but I think it just has something to do with the style of music not being quite as like, I don't know, not quite as well suited for live.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like different genres, if you're a metal band, that's a very in person live experience. I hadn't thought about it like that. I try to go to as many shows as I can, and it doesn't. I guess it doesn't really occur to me as much, but I guess it's reasonable, which would maybe also be frustrating if you're in a genre that you should be able to go out and crush a tour because you obviously have a following.
It is a little frustrating sometimes. It can be. I don't know. That's just been that's what I've noticed about it. I mean, I've been to some shows for artists that are a lot bigger than me that will sell out the dates, but they're not like huge venues. You know what I mean? It's always a little bit surprising to me that the actual live community seems to just, I don't know, it's just a little bit smaller for us. So that's just another part of why I tend to focus more on what I do online, and I'll take those opportunities as they come.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it's great that obviously you can still support yourself with your music, even if touring isn't a part of it. So nice stuff. I think we answered all my questions. We talked about the song. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want to share with the people?
I don't know. I think that's probably about everything I really had kind of prepared for today. Yeah, just hope everybody that finds me for the first time, I hope you find something to get out of the music.
I think they will. I think you're good. Like if you were touring around me, I'd go to your show. I listen to your music. And you're in a Discord, and so anyone who's listening, if you think of questions, they can ping you and they can ask you.
Yes, please do. Please contact me on the Discord. I'll be on there. Anything you need to know, anything you want to know, just hit me up.
Awesome. Oh, we didn't establish. What are your thoughts on Waffle House?
On what?
Waffle House?
Oh, here. Give me a second. Let me see if I have my shirt available. No, I don't know. I don't know exactly where it's at. Well, I'm from Atlanta, so of course you have to rep Waffle House. Does it make you feel good after you eat it? No. Is it the best place you can possibly be if it's 3 a.m. and you're a little bit drunk and you gotta go home to your parents a little bit later? Yes. Yes, it is.
That's exactly right. I love Waffle House. We have a whole Waffle House crew in the Discord because I'm going to try to incorporate it into as many NFT utilities as we can.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Yeah. I don't know if you heard the last song I put out, if that's maybe why you said that, but that's actually like the first line of that song. I say something about being in Waffle House.
Oh, I don't think I picked up on that. No, I'll have to go check that out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's Kenji has never been to the Waffle House Museum. And so we joked about when I come to Atlanta, we're going to have like a meetup there with like NFT owners. We're all going to meet up at the Waffle House Museum together. Because I'm from the north. I'm from Massachusetts. We don't have. So whenever I'm down there, like as soon as the plane lands, I'm finding a Waffle House.
Nice. I didn't even know there was a museum. I'll have to check that out.
How come people don't know about this museum? It's a big deal. Actually, it's not a big deal, apparently.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm sure it's in Atlanta, so I should know about it.
Yeah, I think it's right outside Atlanta.
Yeah, go to the World of Coke when you're here too. If you've never been, it's just like their corporate headquarters, but it's like a big museum too, and it's really interesting.
On the list, we're gonna have meetups everywhere at Waffle House Museum, at the World of Coke.
Absolutely.
Go to a ball game. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. If you are watching the stream now or later, check out the new song in the Jukebot, or go check out Clayton's music on Spotify. Get a better idea of like all of this stuff.
Of course.
Yeah, and everybody have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you guys.